playoffs. We'll open the chat, get everybody all liquored up here in just a minute. But I am Ref Guru, and we are joined by none other than the Hall of Famer, Violator, and the legendary Pirate, Captain Jack. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. It was an interesting week of football. What do you got there, Cap?
No, it's Grand Marnier, man. You said liquored up. I said,
remember. Oh, well, sure.
I was going to say, now, Violator is always taped up and ready to go. And you said liquored up, so I got to get a little bit of juice in me, too. So, hey, I'm good there. Right there.
Well, we're liquored up, fired up, and taped up. But, yeah, that's pretty cool. In any case, it was a pretty good week. We got a few things to talk about, including a Raiders win in Seattle, but we also got to talk about a few other things, including some teams that are making a playoff run and those that are making a playoff exit. We'll put a couple other 3 or 4, who knows how many teams on the clock this week. But before we get into all the craziness and get all that started, V, what are your quick first thoughts, my friend?
My quick first thoughts for this week's show, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Very interesting. Well, in that case, I'm ready. I know Cap's ready. V, are you taped up, ready to go?
Taped up, mouthpiece in, let's go, baby.
Set!
Welcome, everyone, to NFL Nation Live. I am Ref Guru along with Violator and Captain Jack. This is our Week 13 show. We're going to put a few teams on the clock. You might call it our Angry Birds Week, but in that case, we'll open up the chat here in just a second. Welcome, everybody. Bring it on. Keep it real. From that standpoint, it was a very interesting one. Buffalo took care of the Lions after being in Eastern Michigan for 2 weeks. It was a good one. The Lions gave them all they wanted, but Buffalo got away with the win. I think we got a Bills team that is starting to get their act together now. They're chasing the Dolphins here a little bit. We've got plenty of games to flush that out. But what would you guys take on that that opening turkey leg game between the Bills and the Lions last Thursday?
Wow. Like I said, first of all, it was Turkey Day, so it was exciting just to sit back and watch all 3 of the games, man. I thought the Lions came out a little flat, to be honest. I figured the Lions would give them a big push being at home, but as it is, with the struggles that Buffalo has been having offensively,
right,
it's going to make that AFC East race a little bit interesting down the stretch.
Yeah, it very well could. The Lions... They can't seem to catch a break. They bubble up to the top of the conversation and then they lose at home games like that. They're technically on the playoff bubble, but I don't know. I don't think we've put them on the clock yet, actually, have we? No, we haven't. But, there's always room for that. In any case, it was a fun game to watch. New York went into Dallas, got beat by the Cowboys.
Fast. You talk about Lyon and you're trying to get back, Francie. That's why we are the king of Thanksgiving. You imbecile. Yeah. You don't even give me a chance to get my freaking hat on, you asshole. Or that's what it is.
Yeah. Cap, you really ought to tell it like it is. But yeah, now it's open to.
I don't know these guys. I am Jean-Jacques, whatever my name. What was it? Wait, I told you that.
Jean-Jacques Straub? Is that what you said?
There you go. Hey, you need to let me know what the hell my name is.
Oh, well,
Jean-Pierre Jacques.
Yes. Jean-Pierre
Straub. Von Straub.
John something. I'm in there somewhere. That's what she said. I'm in there somewhere. Anyway, you got to talk about that. Why we are still the king of Thanksgiving Day. Have a wing on me. The hell with turducken.
Come on! You can't throw out the turducken. You can't.
No. It's crêpe Suzette with some je ne sais quoi and a bunch of other French shit that I don't know how. Or it's not even that S word. It's merde. See, I don't even have my curse words correct tonight because you started off late. Damn you, zebra! Man,
yeah, but every zebra has a tail. Is all I'm saying. Yeah, I was hoping to slip one by you, but it's probably should realize now that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, the Lions stepped in some Buffalo chips, as you might say. Bills are a bit injured, Matt says. Maybe so. Well, in any case, are we done with Eastern Michigan? Can we go on to Dallas or no?
Yeah, go on, you imbecile. I can take my beret off, you bastard.
Thanks again for my coin ref guru.
Quick change.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Wait, I got a chat here. Thanks again for my coin ref guru. ML and R. Okay.
Oh, Vanessa, that's awesome.
Vanessa.
Okay. I'm glad that you got one.
No. You gave it to her at the TBH event last year or this year at the draft.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That's Raider at Vanessa, great lady that she is.
Gotcha.
Copy
that. Yeah,
just accent. That's why I had to take my beret off.
Yeah, copy that. Oh, in that case, you're welcome for the coin. Yeah. In any case, New York went into Dallas, got beat by the Giants. This is a game the Giants really didn't need to lose if they're going to try to make a playoff run, and quite frankly, they're not. But in any case, Dallas took care of business, and they stayed.
How about them Cowboys? Closest I got to a cowboy hat.
That's actually not too bad. Thank you, Mr. Stetson. By the way, do you know Mr. Jacques Von Straub? Never mind. New England went into Minnesota.
Boy, I'd have no clue what the hell you're talking about. You don't pull that stuff down here in these parts when we're talking about Turkey Day. It's Turkey Day at Jerry's World all day long when we have turducken. And I don't know what that French dude was talking about because turducken is the shiznit, as we say down here in the South. You can't have grits and gravy and stuff like that without turducken. Why the hell ain't you talking, Wayne? Are you that perplexed?
Well, I think he's still in shock. Probably saving all he's got for the review of the Raiders game.
Saving my voice from the game.
Yeah, you should. But the Giants ran headlong into a Texas cattle drive, and the game really wasn't as close as the score. The Giants got a late touchdown. It was otherwise a dominant game from that standpoint for Dallas, and it should have been. But I think the Eagles are still a little bit ahead in terms of talent with regards to Dallas, so that's going to be interesting. That said, though, Dallas leading for the one of the wild card spot, they are not going to be an easy out, even if they have to go on the road. We got to go over to Coach B though, because the Patriots went into Minnesota, got beat by the Vikings. That was a close one. The Vikings got away with one, quite frankly, with that. But I was a little disappointed with the fact that the purple whatever
team like that. You're not going to talk about my team like that. That was
not good. I haven't talked about your team yet.
Yeah, you just said that the Patriots went in and got beat. The Patriots never get beat. We allow the other team to win.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you've got the Al Davis reverse losing thing, right? Instead of taking what they give you, you take what you want.
Do not talk about Mr. Davis like that. We were very, very close friends, and the only reason why that I was not the coach and that Gruden took my job was because Davis knew that he would not be able to run roughshod over me in the coaching staff. So they gave it to that little pixie who had the team for a little while. In fact, he had it twice. If things were different and I was coach of the Raiders when I went in there, the Raiders would have about 7 or 8 Super Bowls by now because I am that great of a coach. You all know that.
So how was the purple gravy, by the way?
Are you talking about the wild orchid gravy that I had down in Stewart? No,
we're talking about the Minnesota Vikings gravy. We don't care what you did down the wild orchid. That was during your bye week.
No, I'm still living the bye week, man. I still got to get a shot in my ass. Don't tell my girlfriend that.
Okay, well, as long as it's a COVID shot, we're all good.
No, it's not a COVID shot, you schmuck. You get a shot in your ass for other things that you get with purple gravy. Come on.
It is kind of interesting though, Coach. You got 2 Thursday games in a row. You had the Turducken Day against Minnesota, and then this week against Buffalo. So maybe we'll bring you back in a little bit, and you can talk about the Buffalo Bills. You're going to get your wings ordered to go.
You understand that it's because I am the great Bill Belichick. You know, like the guy with like I am the great Santini. You ever see that movie? That's a great movie, by the way. But I am the great
Thanks for the heads
Coach
up.
Belichick, and I made sure that normally you get a short week after a Thursday
Uh-huh.
game. I said, no, no, no. I want a full week to get to
Uh-huh.
the next Thursday, and then I want that extra 10 days. So I milked it. Why? Because the NFL knows not to screw with.
They do give you a lot of breaks from that standpoint because your short week was a road game to Minnesota, which you almost won, by the way. But your full week now on
No, no,
Thursday.
we allowed them to win because it was
Oh, that's
Thanksgiving
right.
in the Christmas
Well,
spirit.
that was really nice of you to kick off the holiday season by letting the purple people, not so much eaters, eat some purple gravy.
Yeah.
Denver went into Carolina, got beat by the Panthers. Nobody cares. Tampa Bay went into Cleveland, got beat by the Browns. Nobody wants to win the NFC South. We'll talk about that later. Baltimore goes into Jacksonville. They let this one get away, y'all. Not only did they let Jacksonville hang around, but the Jaguars got the 2-point conversion to send Baltimore home with the loss. Nobody was happier about that, I think, than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, you know what? Baltimore, to me, is in that division that they're in, is slowly painting themselves into a corner.
Really?
I'm just saying, you know, and they're
Yeah.
cheating on that clock thing too.
Right.
But you know, they always rely on Mr. Jackson. That's where I refer to him to just pull it out at the end. But without having that balanced attack and being able to stay on the field,
Yep.
this
Yep.
team is looking average at this point of the season.
No, you're absolutely right, B. And I think the running game is really starting to impact the Ravens' ability to keep the winning streak alive. The AFC North is going to be interesting. I think the Bengals now are a team we have to watch out for, maybe winning the division. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we start reviewing Week 13 because, but they went into Tennessee obviously and beat the Titans and silenced all the whatever was going on there from that standpoint. But I think the Ravens now, instead of leading, are kind of looking in the rearview mirror and seeing a little black and orange, right?
Yeah.
Definitely so.
Yeah, and that whole division is topsy turvy. You know,
Yep.
it's one of those things where you really don't know what the separation is between Cincinnati and Baltimore. You knew that they were going to be there, but you know, has Cleveland woken up, and will they have enough to like maybe get in the mix at the end, or at least spoil the guys above them? I don't know, but they're at least not going away without pissing some people off, and that's just
that's true. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah. I
like
actually had advocated maybe that this week we put Cleveland, Arizona, and Atlanta on the clock, but we can debate that later in a little bit. V, did you have some comment on Ravens?
Yeah, I was just looking at what Matt said about them being injured, and that's
Right.
at this time of the season, December and January. That's when you make a break, man.
That's right.
So I say we've got a few teams sneaking up on people, and I say sneaking with tongue in cheek, so to speak.
Yeah. No,
we'll talk about that in a minute.
No, but that's a really good point because you got to have, if you got key people injured, Packers, whatever, and you're trying to make that December run, you're in trouble, quite frankly, if you've got key players injured. If you've got key players just nicked up that you can still try to win with the games that are left, you got to decide who and where those teams are going to play and how this is going to play out. But there's not a lot of room for error in there for some of these teams. And like you said, Baltimore, their defense is not very good. They're giving up a lot of points on defense. In fact, if you look at Baltimore's over-under, they're only a plus 29. Okay, so their offense scored 29 points more than their defense has given up. And in addition to that, you could argue that, well, they've lost their 4 games by a total of 11 points. But we're in December now, essentially, and that 11 points is a factor. So they're doing better than Cincinnati in the over-under and points given up. Cincinnati's lost their 4 games by almost double that, by 27 points. But Cincinnati's a plus 54. So even though Baltimore, in terms of overall scoring, is where are they? They are 13. Cincinnati's number 5. So that's why I'm saying the Bengals are kind of making a little bit of a run here, but I think the schedule we'll see how this plays out. But I think you're right. Baltimore's got to tighten up their defense, and I don't think they're going to find a running game. But if they're going to find one, they need to find it like right now. Houston and win to Miami got blown out by the Dolphins. It's the Dolphins team I think that the Bills are chasing actually right now in the AFC East. I think it changes by the time the season's over. I think Buffalo can still win this thing. But that said, and I think the Jets are going to go away, so to speak. Patriots are still kind of hanging around, if you will. But whoever wins the AFC East, you could argue that the number 2 team gets a playoff spot. Neither one of those teams are going to be easy out, right?
Definitely not, because I see a 2-horse race in this division between the Bills and the Dolphins. And the Dolphins now are flexing themselves on defense, and you know they can score points. So come December and January, watch out for the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
that's one of the main reasons why they picked up Brandon Chubb was to solidify that defense and adding that to the mix, because obviously they knew they could score, but they needed a stalwart on defense. So that's why they went out and got him. And it was a kudos to that staff, GM and all that came in there. Brad Chubb is definitely a great acquisition. I mean, granted, their defense didn't suck, but then getting that extra piece is something that's going to be well for them in the playoffs when they make the playoffs.
Right.
I'm sure they
Right.
will.
A lot of stuff going on in the chat there, and I think let's address that. So they're talking about what would it be like for Lamar Jackson to become a Raider, but then there was also talk about in there, and I think that could potentially be beneficial depending on what other weapons we keep as part of that. The other comment, though, because without you can have Lamar Jackson. But if you have Lamar Jackson without Jacobs, you basically have Lamar Jackson with the same issue you have within Baltimore. Because there's nothing wrong with John Harbaugh. I'm sorry, with Harbaugh as the coach. But the other comment in the chat was, well, what about Sean Payton comes to Las Vegas? I don't think he will, but if he did, we had Lamar Jackson. That would probably be pretty cool. I don't know if Sean Payton runs the system that Lamar Jackson would be effective in, but probably. But I think there's 2 other factors there. We have to keep enough weapons to make Lamar Jackson without him having to carry the whole load, so to speak, like he's trying to do in Baltimore. And then I think the second thing my concern with Sean Payton is who's his defensive coordinator going to be? Because he's had some strange cats there in New Orleans, and I'm not so sure I'm a fan of some of the folks that he's had a defensive coordinator. But
Well, Greg Williams was interesting.
Well, yeah, right.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Interesting is a key word.
Yeah. Let's see.
I was being kind. I didn't want to swear anymore.
I appreciate that. Dolphins solid overall in the AFC. So that's true. And I just think the Bills are just slightly better, if not more experienced at this factor, which may play into that. But if you look at this, Bills finish out with, they got New England this week. Then they have 2 division games at home, the Jets and Dolphins. Then they're on the road in Chicago, on the road in Cincinnati, and finish at home against New England. The Dolphins have 3 road games. This is why I think that Bills could bubble up to the top here. Miami goes to San Francisco this week. They might get a win, but they probably stay on the West Coast. They got the Chargers the week after that. Then they go to Buffalo. So the Dolphins have 2 road games against 2 pretty good football teams, and then have to play a division game on the road. Then they have Green Bay at home, New England. They finish with the Jets. So in all, I like the Bills' schedule a little bit better, and that's why I think that they end up bubbling to the top. But again, even the Dolphins on the road in the playoffs, not a team that is going to go away unless they end up having to go to like Tennessee or maybe Buffalo, whatever, and have to play in the cold weather. That could put the Dolphins out. Let's put money to Jackson. Defense will continue to suck. Well, maybe. But I don't think we have a lot of money to spend. So that's a good comment, and I don't disagree with it. But I'm hoping that, and that's a good point with Sean Payton, even though I've questioned his quality of defensive coordinators, you can't argue the ranking that those defensive coordinators have put the Saints in. They're typically pretty good on defense. So yeah, but I do think we'd have to spend some money on that. Josh Jacobs runs for 1,000 yards for the third time in 4 years. Probably so. Probably so. We'll talk about the Raiders here just a minute.
Pay the man.
Yeah. Oh well, if they don't, they're crazy.
Well,
Chicago.
It's not a matter of paying the man. It's a matter of how you pay the man or how you put him into the cap and under what auspices. Are you going to franchise tag him and then work out a contract? Because if you franchise tag him, that is probably going to piss him off. If you're working with his agent before that time, it would behoove you to do that, but you're not going to say anything about it. But you got to work the issue, because if you let him go to free agency and he sees what the coin is, then obviously they're going to say, let's say he gets a whatever. It says, hey, I got a $5 million contract. I'm just using real numbers here. Maybe it's only a $3 million contract, but the agent is going to overshoot that, making sure that you double whatever that is. So really, he has a $3 million contract. And again, I'm just using numbers.
You're right. Right.
When it's really, he says you got a $5 million contract, saying you got to give him 7 or 8. So he's already made $5 million off of his agent because of him going out there. They got to figure something out, and I don't know whether you're going to be doing that.
Right. No, those are all brilliantly stated points in this whole mix. There's another comment in there, is that if Josh McDaniels stays, Ed says he'd rather see Caleb Williams under McDaniel's system, and I agree with that. What I agree with is the fact that it'd be someone besides Lamar Jackson. From that standpoint, I don't know if I'm sold on Caleb. I haven't, but that's because I haven't seen him enough as much as maybe I should have.
And I don't know anything about him other than that Ed Winchell talks about him all the time.
I've seen him in a couple games.
He's pretty damn good.
Yeah, he is. No, I saw him. I've seen him in a couple of games, but he's moved SC into the top 4. So there's something to be said for that. And I've seen some of the other guys, some of the other quarterbacks that we've talked about on this show, not sold on them. So if McDaniel stays, you got to trade for somebody that's already out there, or if you're going to go full reset, Williams might be worth it depending on the system. If you're going to go out and get a Sean Payton who could run an offense that Lamar Jackson could benefit from, then that's there, as long as, like we said, we keep some armor around him.
Yeah, Matt Marinovich, you can't do that. The way that Chandler Jones's contract is written, you're going to have to give him at least 2 years before you can get out and get a little bit of cap relief. That's unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Sad to say, we're stuck with him for another year.
Yeah, and Abram just got dumped by the Packers.
Got dumped by the Packers, yes.
Yeah. Caleb and Sanchez are 2 completely different quarterbacks. I agree with you on that front. I totally agree with you on that front. In a Bart Starr, Mitch Trubisky kind of way. Chicago and New York got beat by the Jets. This is a Jets team that it is a lot of fun to watch, but at the end of the day, they're not going to go anywhere. There just aren't enough spots for that team. But they were the Chicago Bears were without Justin Fields, and I think that had a lot to do with them only scoring 10 points. The Bears just do not seem very motivated right now, although if the Bears are going to win another game this year, it might be this week. The Bears have Green Bay, then a bye. Then they have Philadelphia, Buffalo, at Detroit, Minnesota. I don't think it looks great for the Bears, but with Rodgers banged up and the Packers hurting, he might not own them this week. We'll get to that. Cincinnati went into Tennessee and shut up the Titans. I think what Cincinnati, I know it's a close game as it should be, but I think what Cincinnati showed us is that they're for real and the Titans are just hanging on and winning in a bad division, a lot like Tampa Bay is doing on the NFC side of things. Bears hibernating in the Meadowlands. Yeah, and they're probably going to hibernate after this week too. Dumped by the Packers. Why am I not surprised? Well, I don't know. I think he could have panned out into something good. I don't know if it's attitude, coaching. I think there's some ability there in the right system, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
And the right decade.
Well, that's true. No, that's absolutely true. It's hard to play his style ball Abram can't cover. I agree with that 100%. I think he can cover some, but he's a hitter, and you need to put him in a spot where he can hit people. But Cap's right. If you're going to play these days, you can't hit anybody. So
Yeah.
it's a tough spot for him to be in, quite frankly.
Would it convert him to linebacker? I would say, Ref.
Does he have the size for that? He certainly doesn't have. Well,
He has
I
the
don't know.
frame. He can be
He'd be a
good,
like,
nickel linebacker.
You'd have to be playing a 3-4 V, I think, because he's
Probably,
not gonna be. I mean, when you look at the Steelers and you had Ham, Lambert, and Russell, Andy Russell,
They can all cover.
you can play a 3-4 with that. Of course, the front four that they had wasn't too bad either, but you can play a 4-3 with those guys. I don't disagree that maybe Abram could be linebacker if he's got the size, because he certainly can hit people, and that's the position where you'd want that. But I don't know if he's not a good cover guy. You got to expect the linebackers, especially that if you're going to play a 4-3, your two outside linebackers have to maybe be able to cover the tight end. I'm not sure he could do that. Well, okay, I think he could cover the tight end, but I think he's got to be free enough where he doesn't have to have run and pass assignments like you're going to have in a.
Can't cover the tight end, and we can ask Mr. Kelsey about that as well, because he'd give us straight up evaluation on that.
Well, no, but right, Cap. No, I agree with you on that. But covering the tight end from a safety spot versus linebacker spot should be two different types of coverage discipline as a player. But I agree with you from a safety standpoint. No, can't do that. Maybe on short stuff over the middle. Maybe, I don't know. We could debate that forever. Atlanta went into Washington and got beat by the Commodores. Atlanta just really frustrating because this is a team had the potential to just be put in this division away, and they're not. Washington quietly sneaking up on people, and their schedule might favor them staying in this thing for a while. If you look at Washington's schedule, guys, they got the Giants this week. I know it's in New York, but they got the Giants. Then they got to bye. Then they're going to play the Giants again at home. And that there you go. There you go.
Here we go, baby.
Yeah. Don't take it too far for the
That's enough.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to get a call on that one, but who can cover Kelsey? No one. He's a good point. Well, that's true. That's a good point. Whether it's Abrams or whoever, no one seems to be able to account for Kelsey at this point. But let's wait till we get to the playoffs. It might be a little different when we get to playoffs. But we'll see. The Chargers went into Arizona, beat the Angry Birds by a point because they went for two. Pretty bold play. They actually ran the play that Seattle could have won the Super Bowl on, but got it picked off. But it was pretty cool play. It's a gutsy call, but I think that loss by the Cardinals at home with the Chargers is enough to put them on the clock. What do you guys think?
Aye.
I mean, it's the Cardinals team's number 11 in scoring. So from that standpoint, they're still kind of hanging around. The problem is they're 4-8. Their over/under is a -57. So even though they put up 254 points, they've given up 321 points, or so they've lost their 8 games by a total of 91 points. That's not a playoff team. And as much as the stats on the scoring part could lead you down a different path, I think the Cardinals are out.
Get out of here!
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I would advocate for them to be on the clock, and maybe Cleveland as well. Cleveland's number 12 in scoring. Okay, but they have the same problem that Arizona does. Is they're not showing up when we need them to. The Raiders went into Seattle, beat the Seahawks. This was a fun one to watch. It may have been frustrating for some folks, but it was entertaining as hell. But there's a lot to talk about here, and I know it's a Raiders slant, but that's okay because it was one of the better games of the day. Not only did it go into overtime, but Jacobs sets a team record with 229 rushing yards, 303 all-purpose yards. You can't argue with how cool it was to see Raiders history on Sunday. But the other part of it too was not only did they they get it done in overtime by just punching the Seahawks in the mouth, so to speak. But honestly, and V and I were talking about this, Cap, in the pregame before you joined us, we did actually get a little help from the refs this week.
I was thinking about that. It's like they said that Jacobs fumbled the ball, and I think that's what you're talking about. But apparently,
there was that one, and then there was the catch on the sidelines that they ruled incomplete.
It was incomplete though. Is that the one with DK Metcalf? It was. Is that the one that they took 15 friggin' minutes to make a call?
It was at least 15 minutes. It was at least 15 minutes.
Yeah. And when normally it's that long, I'm looking like, how are they going to screw us? Because first off, it's Brad Allen. And I think the Raiders had won prior to this game. I think the Raiders had won one game where he was the referee. Maybe you have the stats on that there, ref, but I think it was 1-6 or something ridiculous like that. But he didn't have the ball. It wasn't a catch. I saw that. And, of course, all the Seattle fans are going like this. And I'm like, yeah, I got you like that.
Well, it was on that play, it was ruled a catch on the field.
Right.
And so Sarah had a good look at it. But we were debating this on television during the call because I had some folks over to my house. Of course, we were debating the whole thing about what it is and what it isn't. And I was telling the staff here that the call on the field was a catch, and I felt like it was going to get overturned, but we disagreed on the why it got overturned. So fundamentally, they got the call right, but it's one of those where the optics are bad, unfortunately. So we'll take it because it went our way, but it could have gone either way because remember it was ruled a catch on the field. And the other part too, Cap, that V and I were talking about in the green room before the show started was that at home on television, no one ever said anything to us on television as to whether or not the ball hit the ground or not. It was all about what happened after he allegedly caught the ball and then rolled over and went out of bounds. We were told on television that he caught the ball, but when he hit the ground, the ball came loose and therefore didn't have possession before he went out of bounds. That's why they ruled it incomplete. I don't know what you guys saw at the stadium or what they told you at the stadium.
Well, and that was why it was perplexing because again, it seemed like 15 minutes. And again, it was
at least that.
I should have looked at the clock, but it's like I only have my pocket watch there, and I didn't realize the schmuck was going to take that long. Now, from my vantage point, and I had a big screen behind me, it looked like because again I don't have TV, but it looked to me like it was like a boom. Like it hit the ground and kind of like popped into his hands. And people said that no, he actually caught it. I know he had his hands underneath it, but it didn't say like here's the hands underneath it, but there's that space in between. And that's why to me it looked like it hit the ground and popped up, and then he controlled it and then kind of juggled around it. Because I'm saying, no, dude, that's not a catch. Of course, every Seahawks fan is going like this, and like I said, I'm going like that to them, but I'm keeping it on PG.
Here's the thing, though. So there was a lot of debate about whether he made the catch or he didn't make the catch. So with the call ruling on the field that he made the catch, then the question became did he maintain possession of the ball after, if you will, hitting the ground? No. They've modified that recently from previous years about the whole surviving the ground crap, which is a direction with officiating we never should have gone. But because we went all the way out there, we had to come all the way back. So the debate at our house was whether or not he maintained possession long enough to stay in the field of play before he went out of bounds. So our position was that he had caught the ball, and when he went to the ground, lost possession of it, and by the time he gained possession of it, he was out of bounds, so therefore it was incomplete. There's no way that Sarah at full speed could have seen that. Only in replay could you have seen the bobble, if you will. But my point was that if it was ruled a catch and his shoulder or hip, we couldn't tell which, hit the ground, that should have maintained a catch, because after that, whatever happened doesn't matter. because once a body part other than the hand or foot hit the ground, if it was ruled a catch, it was so quick that if it was ruled a catch, then we couldn't tell hip or shoulder, whatever, hits the ground. That was the catch. After that, doesn't matter what happens to it. It can come loose, pop up, go get popcorn, doesn't matter. But because in replay, they were showing that the ball was moving, they ruled that he was out of bounds before he maintained possession. It was one of those calls where the intent of the rule and the application of the rule collide, and it's very difficult to get it right. And I'm not sure if they got it right or they got it wrong, quite frankly. I'll go with it. They got it right because it benefited us. Had it not benefited us and Seattle kept the ball, right, the outcome of this game would have been entirely different. Right. And my argument would have been that they screwed up. So I guess I'm playing both sides here, but I'm glad I didn't have to make that call. It happened right in front of her, and she had a good view of it. And this is a Super Bowl assigned down judge, and I know her. And if she saw a catch, then I think you had a catch. I mean, you could argue what it did or what it didn't do, but in any case, it is what it is. But that was one of those touchy ones that could have gone either way, but we got the benefit of that.
Now, I missed when Jacobs fumbled. Now that was quick. Was that a legitimate fumble? Because I didn't see it. I only saw it in live action, and then I didn't see that.
You talking about Jacobs?
Yeah, it looked like one of his body parts was. You had like his back was on the ground or something, and then the ball came out. Now, I'm sorry if I'm late to the point.
I thought it was a fumble, and I thought it should have stayed a fumble. But I think if I remember that play correctly, I think they ruled maybe part of his ankle or shin or maybe ankle was down before the ball came out. There had to have been some body part other than the hand or foot that they ruled was down before the ball came loose. I'd have to go back and look at that again. I was getting distracted because I was entertaining guests and I was trying to explain stuff and not really watching. I have to go back and look at that one again. Again, if it went our way, great. But I don't know about that one. I'd have to look at it again. My thought was that it was a fumble, would have stayed a fumble.
I think on that play though, like in the comments here, they had blown the whistle, like stoppage of play. So
yeah, well, okay. Now, and Kev's got a good point there. He says, and I'm trying to read y'all's chat a lot, so bear with me if I'm missing a few things. But Cool Kev says Jacob's cap touched the ground before the ball came out. Probably so. That said, too, if they ruled forward progress was stopped, right, that ends the play where it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter if he fumbled, body part, snot nose, whatever happened. If they ruled forward progress and blew the whistle, it doesn't matter what happens after that.
I think that was a call on that one.
They probably could have ruled forward progress, and that is reviewable, and they could have changed it from that standpoint. Let's see. The whistle already blew. Yeah, maybe so. And if that's the case, again, we're saying that they ruled forward progress and the play is over. Will the Raiders have a good crew of refs Sunday in Las Vegas? Craig Rolstad is the referee for our game on Sunday against the Chargers. And the short answer is I don't know. I don't know anybody on that crew. We get farther and farther away from some of these guys that I worked with, 400 years ago. Steve Woods is the umpire. Jim Mello rings a bell as a down judge, but I don't know. I don't know any of these folks. So I would say that I don't know. That's what I have to say in this crew. I don't know. I like Craig Rolstad. I don't know him, but I know a little bit of him. I think he runs a pretty good show. I don't think he runs as good a show as some of the others, but he runs a better show than some of the others. So, I mean, I wouldn't put him in Hockley's ratings or Blakeman or Vinovich, or maybe even Brad Allen, but
ooh, stop swearing on your own show.
We won our game last week or 2 weeks ago with Brad Allen's crew.
In spite of.
Well, maybe, but we got the calls, so there you go. Wayne is
Yes,
right. The
now
whistle.
we have 2 wins while he's ref. So
Yeah.
he doubled our production in one game, but I think we're still like 2-6.
Says we'll find out tomorrow who the crew will be. Well, I already know who the crew is. But if you want to find out tomorrow, that's fine. But it's Greg Rolstad. But I don't know anybody on that crew, so I don't know. We'll just have to pray that they're good, and we'll talk about it in Week 14 show. So we probably have about 7 penalties. Well, that wouldn't be all that bad, actually.
Actually not.
might turn out okay. If it was ruled incomplete because he juggled the ball out of bounds. Well, that was the ruling. Yeah, that he didn't maintain possession at the time that he hit the ground. That's what we were told on television. And when they slowed it down, you could see as he rolled over and hit the ground, the ball was moving. Yeah, it's a tough one. I at that speed, that's a tough one. And there's no way that Sarah, even if she saw him make the catch, and I know there's been debate about whether it hit the ground or not, but let's assume that she got the call right as far as making the catch. At that speed, there's no way she has any idea what happened to the ball after that, between the time that he rolled over and went out of bounds. So her call was catching the field of play, body part down, rolled over, out of bounds, clock runs. But in the replay of that catch, they were able to see that the ball was moving a little bit. And if it was still moving when he was out of bounds, that's incomplete pass. But there's no way as a down judge you can see all of that. Again, if replay was working and that's what they want to go with, that's the call. They got it right.
It's great when it works in our favor too. Sometimes, you know.
Yes,
like
and we could, and we, and it, yeah, and had it not.
And as long as they took the look at it, that's what we were all saying in our group. They're getting ready to screw us right now.
Well, that's what I thought too.
The longer it takes, 90% of the time is like they're waiting to screw us as hardly, or not as hard as possible. Most of the time. Because like we were talking about Mr. Index Card, and I had to tell somebody about Mr. Index Card because they didn't know about that. That took about 15 friggin' minutes. And I also showed them how that they were leaning back on the pole. You know, if the pole is up and down perpendicular, we get a first down, and he can take that index card and shove it up his patoot. I said patoot. I was being nice.
No, I got you.
They also were leaning the damn pole back. Of course, it's not a first down if you're leaning the pole. It's supposed to be 90 degrees and you're at 87. That 3 degrees means something.
Yeah. Interesting points here. Got to maintain possession all the way through. Yes, if you hit the ground to a certain point. What changed with that was how long after you hit the ground, because they went to, so you have to survive the ground. Well, what does that mean? Nobody knows. So yes, you have to survive. You still have to survive the ground, but they're not calling it that anymore because it's BS. What they're saying is if you're going to catch the ball and hit the ground, you have to hold it for another second or so. But it's still kind of random. Put the index card where the sun don't shine. Sure. There was another comment in there.
Bless you.
What Sarah should have saw that the ball was underneath his hands. The ball was laying on his stomach. Not exactly sure the comment, but what I can tell you at that speed is that she thinks she was able to determine that his hands were under the ball and otherwise had the ball in his hands, which allowed her to use the when in doubt philosophy that it was a catch. Everything else that happened after she saw him with his hands on the ball at full speed was not something that she could have ruled on. So she made the call, hands on the ball, body part inbounds, that's a catch. Replay overturned that because they could see more of what the rest of us, including Sarah, could not see. Whether or not they overturned it correctly or not would be the debate we would have to have in some sort of film room discussion about what body part hit the ground, at what point did it hit the ground, was the ball moving before or after they hit the ground. We'd have to do it frame by frame and take a look at it, but all I can tell you is it is what it was. then she should have called it a catch. She did call it a
She did.
catch.
She did call it a catch.
She did
Ruben.
call it a catch. And what we're saying is that there was no way for her to determine at that speed what happened after that. Okay. So replay stepped in. They said no, he was bobbling it, and there was not did not maintain possession, assuming he made the catch. Because I think there's still some debate about whether it hit the ground or not. I don't think it did, but I didn't see that. But if it did not, then he did maintain possession before he went out of bounds. Incomplete pass.
Ref, one thing before you go to the break, I do have one referee question that was posed by Richie Riche. I just want to make sure we get it in this segment before we roll over, sir.
Sure.
For halftime. Yes, sir.
The edge of the ball hit the ground. That doesn't make it incomplete. What the hell with hitting the ground? The ball was in the stuff. Well, we can talk about this until we all turn purple. The control part came, the ruling on the field, I'll say this again, the ruling on the field was that initially it was a catch.
I'm trying to take a nap here.
I know. It was that it was a catch. The ball control question about whether or not it was truly complete or incomplete came after the down judge ruled that it was a complete pass. That's what happened after, which allowed them to determine that it was not a completed catch because he didn't maintain throughout.
It was a catch. It was not a catch. It was ruled out.
Yeah.
And then if they fool out the ball, go to the next game.
Yeah.
All you
Okay.
people that are talking about this stuff,
Well,
move
I
on.
know. I just think it's important to try to get it right. That's what we
You
try
get
to
it
do.
right. We like you. You actually have the balls to call the stuff correctly. We like, what's your name?
I don't know.
Referee Zebra. Zebra.
The
Right?
Rams went into Kansas City, got beat by the Chiefs. The Rams are out. The Saints went into San Francisco, got shut out by the 49ers. I think the Saints would be done if the NFC South wasn't in a complete disaster. Right. Green Bay gave the Eagles all they wanted to, but couldn't get it done. And I think the Packers are in big trouble. They may not be able to beat the Bears this week, not because they're not better than the Bears, but just because the Bears are kind of pissed off. Pittsburgh went into Indianapolis, upset the Colts, if you will. This is a pretty big win for the Steelers. I know they're on the clock, probably so are the Colts. From that standpoint, I think we have both those teams on the clock. We put Pittsburgh on the clock actually back in week 6. We put Indianapolis on the clock in week 9. But you got to appreciate the way the Steelers are holding their team and their season together in an otherwise not Ben Roethlisberger era coming into Pittsburgh, right?
Well, it's just to me, Ref, it's just a team that's playing with pride. You know they may talent-wise may not have everybody. I know the running back was kind of dinged up there, but that defense pretty much carried that team. And that young quarterback, Pickett, he's taking his lumps right now. Watch out for him because he's got that dog in him.
And we talked about that early when even before he was drafted, that he should go to Pittsburgh and start a whole nother legacy there of good quarterbacking. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. I think the rest of the division better find a way to keep up because the Steelers aren't that far away from turning this thing around.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that division, you got to have a quarterback. Are we? And I missed that game because I was sleeping.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. All right.
I had to catch up. I had the red eye, so
we've closed the book on week 12. We'll get into some week 13 games. We won't cover every game because not every game matters. We'll cover the ones that matter. Talk about the ones we think matter. And what do you got, Cap?
Oh! This is from Richie Riche.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. He wanted to know about when DK Metcalf was speaking to a official last week, basically asking him about the call, and it appeared that he was, wasn't really nasty because remember Devontae Adams got that penalty last week for being, that the flag was, and he was talking to a referee, and that got him a penalty. Well, apparently, and a play was similar with DK Metcalf was talking to a referee, and he got fined $30,000 for that. So what Richie, I think, was going to ask you is what is the etiquette between a referee, a player, and fines? I think I might have screwed up the question, but that's the main points on that. 30K, talking to an official, gets fined. What is the rule book? What is the etiquette? And please elaborate, sir.
Well, it's a really loaded question. We probably spend a whole session on that. Here's what I can tell you. We probably don't have the full context of what happened. Let's just start right off the bat by saying we have what's been allegedly reported, and maybe it's factual. I don't know. What we do know is that a player asked a ref. I think what I understood it to be, he asked him if a certain play. I think his engagement with another player, if it was DPI or not. And allegedly, the ref said, "Did I throw a flag?" As if to say, if it had been DPI, I would have thrown the flag.
Correct.
That's what we know. Player gets fined. Okay. So the etiquette, to answer that part of your question, is don't talk to the officials. Don't even go there. Because it doesn't matter if you're asking him for a chocolate chip cookie recipe or if you're telling him that his head is otherwise upside down in another body part. It's not going to end well for you. And so regardless of what the player said and what the official said in return, you're just going to lose when it comes to the officials. They're just not going to side with the player when it comes to any engagement with officials. So if you're a player, don't engage the officials. Now, if you're a head coach, it's different. We're talking about players. If you're players, don't engage with the officials. Don't touch them. Don't look at them funny. Don't bat your eyes. Don't ask them out on a date. Don't do anything. Don't ask them if their socks were bleached the night before. Just leave it alone. The problem from an optic standpoint, the player is going to lose. He gets fined because that's the NFL stance. You talk to the official, out, fined, whatever. That's just how it's going to be. The problem what I have with this whole thing is that the players are trying to figure out how the officials are going to call the game. Now, I don't know when this happened during the game, if it's in the middle, beginning, end, whatever. I think that the broader scope of this whole thing has to do with the entire officiating relationship to the game of football, the players, the coaches. That should be fixed. That said, this is going forward, my personal opinion. I had a lot of players talk to me. And I can tell you I was never snarky to them. And I think that if the official, again, this is pro football, but if that's the response that official said, I think that didn't help. He's probably right by saying, I didn't throw a flag, stupid, so it's not a penalty. Well, that doesn't help. He could have just said no. He could have ignored it. He could have said, go back to the huddle. He could have said, we'll discuss it later. But I don't think the snarky comment back was helpful to the player who, in my opinion, had a legitimate question. He wanted to know if, let's just say it was a previous play, if it was DPI. He's trying to figure out how this game's going to get officiated. And the official didn't help that whole situation. I think if he'd have just said no, the whole thing could have gone away. But I think a snarky comment back by the officials is not cool. But if that's the way that they're going to run this show, then the player should have just let it go. If there was any other engagement before or after that, that's, we don't know if there was or not. There could have been something that led up to that. We don't know. We have a reported incident in a context of things that we as fans don't have the rest of the information on. If I was head of officials, I'd be asking a lot more questions about what happened. It could be that if this was the back judge or whatever, maybe that back, I don't remember who it was. I'd like to know. Maybe that back judge just has an attitude problem. We don't know. But back to your question, what's the etiquette? Don't engage the officials. When the play's over, hand them the ball, go back to the huddle. And if you don't like what they did, talk to the head coach, talk to anybody else but the officials. If you want to talk about it after the game, that's up to you. But don't engage officials on the field as a player. Are there times when you have to engage officials on the field as a player? Yes. If you're a team captain, we want to know if you want an accepted penalty or not. We might have to go to team captains and say, hey, keep your players in line. This thing's starting to get a little chippy. We want to avoid any issues. So there are times when there are reasons for official player interaction with regards to the administration of the game. A player asked an official if that was DPI. That official probably was like, at that level, you should know as a player whether it was or not. And because there wasn't a flag, obviously it wasn't. But I think it's probably blown out of proportion a little bit. If I had been in charge of this whole thing, I don't think I would have fined a player $30,000 for asking an official if it was DPI. There's either more to the story, or someone just, I think, has a giant stick up their butt. I just don't see the whole point in that thing. I think it sets a bad example for how people, human beings, should be treated. I know it's a game, blah, blah, blah. But finding the player, I think I would have just sat people down and said, we had an incident, don't engage officials and let it go. I don't think I need to fine a player $30,000 for asking the official if that was DPI, if that's really what happened.
And I appreciate that, and I'll let Richie Riche to go back. And Cool Kev, it wasn't in the early 80s. It was like 86 to 89 when I was in the Philippines. I'm just going to clarify that.
Officials need to be full-time and not have New York looking over the shoulder. There should be an official there that covers replay in the booth. I agree with all of that, and I would add a whole bunch more to that, because that statement alone fixes 75% of the issue, but it's not the other 25% that we could go into. There's other parts about the officials being full-time and who's in charge of replay and where and how much of replay is. I'll just say this. As part of that other 25% of fixing officiating, if you will, why are some plays reviewable and some plays not? Why aren't all plays reviewable? And I don't mean you stop the game to look at every play. What I'm saying is New York should be looking at every play in every game and managing the game for every play. And if you need to make a stoppage, you make a stoppage. You don't make a stoppage because one rule is, or one play is reviewable and one play you let it go because it's not reviewable. How is that managing the game? That hooks up replay all the way through the system. So you don't have replay and only have replay for certain plays. Why even have replay? There's no point. I mean, because it doesn't fix the other 50% of the problem, which is, well, why isn't it reviewable? Oh, well, because we don't do that. What? That's messed up. So
because I said so theorem.
And then the other part of the full-time officials part, they did it backwards. They made the referees, if you will, essentially. Now, there's some wiggle room in there because of the Referees Association contract, blah, blah. But essentially, on paper, in functional reality, still not. But on paper, they made the referees full-time and everybody else not. Think about that. The youngest officials, the ones who need the most training, are not the full-time officials. The referees who don't need that training are full-time officials. Now, you tell me what's wrong with that. That's more bass backwards than anything I've ever seen in my life. If you
they got a better union rep,
huh?
They got a better union rep,
probably. But my point is that you either make them all full-time or you don't. Or if you're going to make them 50% of the officials full-time, the youngest ones get full-time until they're in their 5th or 7th year if they make it that far. And and then you can wean them off, quote, full time if you want to. So and the whole argument was been, well, what are they going to do for for the whole year if they're full time? Let me tell you what. If I were in vice president officiating, I have plenty of things for the officials to do for the full, maybe not 52 weeks. Give everybody a month off, or whatever. But there's plenty of work that the officials can do to make them better than they are now. And if they were full time, it would be easier because you could communicate. Did you realize that after the Super Bowl until like May 15th, the NFL can't even talk to the officials? Can't even contact them. No phone calls, emails, nothing. That's their blackout time. Then around May 15th or so, everything goes off. Oh, hey, we need to get you in for your physical and get your uniform and get you ready to go to camp, blah, 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 blah. Really? The players are working essentially year-round. But my point is there's plenty for the officials to do and plenty of training that they could do that would make full-time officials the process of everything much more consistent. We still have an optics problem with replay and communication with fans and all those type of things we have to fix. Amazing experience meeting. You'll get home at my wife.
That's the
Oh, congratulations.
Mazel tov. Mazel tov.
Wow,
City.
that's awesome.
Mazel tov. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see you, but I'm glad you got at least to get see Wayne.
Yeah, congratulations.
good stuff, man, CD.
Yeah. So sorry if I missed the other comments. I was trying to talk to the camera. The NFL likes the refs being corrupt. Yeah, because it's very much like a magician not giving away his secrets, because that's the whole point. If you knew how easy it was, you'd be like, well, I could do that. I go to Vegas and be David Copperfield, make millions of dollars, except that once everybody knows the secret, who's going to pay for it? If nobody knows the secrets for officiating, then everything's good. That's the way they want it. They can hide by whatever political bull ass they want to. But yeah, until they're completely transparent, you're absolutely right. With regards to your question with the player official contact, is there any gaps there that we need answered, or did we cover it?
No, I think that I was going to say, Richie, if you want a definitive encyclopedic answer to everything that you ask, make sure that you watch from like the 35-minute to the hour 5 mark for the Raider game, as well as the official stuff, because that's very detailed, and everything you ever wanted to know was answered in that question. And I appreciate that, because there are people that want to know, and that's why they ask me and they ask Wayne to ask you, because
Well, I try to know, and the challenge with some of it, Cap, and as you guys know, is that it's complicated. It's always going to be complicated, and so there's all these nuances that factor into all these things that happen. On top of that, you have change of leadership, so philosophically things are sometimes change. It's like when we have an election, we get a new president, they have policy changes. We're going to do this instead of do that. The officiating is the same way. You have changes at the top, and they say, well, we used to call it this, now we're going to call it that. And all of a sudden the fans are like, whoa, wait, what do you mean you don't know what a catch is? Well, because, there's a lot of nuances that go on too, which make it more complicated than it should be. But the lack of transparency in the communication back out to fans doesn't help. Look how many chat pieces we had just talking about the catch in Seattle. Okay, where else can the fans go and ask officiating questions and get some answers? I know there's still some debate about the answers that we gave. I understand that, but in a live scenario where it's happening in real time, because right now I have amnesia about what catch that was and where it was. But if this is live during actual engagement in a Manning cast kind of way, the fans could hear us talking about this in real time and have a better sense of what's going on and what New York is talking about. You get some of that from television. You get some of that from the officials that they have assigned to the broadcast. Terry McCauley and some of the others that are doing it, and they're excellent at that. But there's still a bunch of other pieces to the puzzle that sometimes don't get explained as probably well they should. And I think some of that got this. I know this game wasn't on Monday night, but some of that got broken when Troy Aikman
about this. Yep, I heard about that. Said that don't worry about what you saw, but we're gonna call this. I just found out about that today because my buddy talked about it. I said I will. I'm glad you reminded me. I was going to ask about that too.
Yeah. So there's that, and then on top of that, you have Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who now, because they're with ESPN, get separated from Mike Pereira, who they had a long relationship with at Fox. And so there's all these pieces that they're trying to put together, but you have these refs and officials, very much like myself, separated from everything else. So we can try to stay up and keep current on what's going on, but there's not a lot of interaction going on between the officials that are retired or working for the networks and what's going on in New York. Because technically the officials now that are signed to network, they're part of the media. Well, the officiating department can't talk to the media. So there's no transparency there. There's just advanced knowledge transfer, if you will, that's going on Sundays. And it's fairly effective, but it could be better. I gave some good answers about that ridiculous fake catch. Okay. All right. I hope Gruden wins his suit and blows the roof off the NFL and Goodell.
Amen.
NFL equals Disney. Interesting point. When you look at
earlier,
this, in addition to that, with NFL Plus, why didn't the NFL just buy Netflix? I mean, you already had a built-in audience. You already had a subscriber base. Add the football fans to all the other media content that you have. Seems like a win-win to me. They are protecting their interests, absolutely, because it's a business.
Take care,
all right,
Terry.
Terry. Take care. Thanks for joining us. I hope we were helpful. Any other officiating questions we can try to cover before it gets dark?
No, I'm good.
All right. Y'all think the Raiders can really make a playoff push? No, but it was fun to ask that. That's right, Gruden. Sock it to them. Yeah. It would be interesting if some of that stuff came out with regards to his situation in Washington and all that. NFL Plus is a ripoff. Indeed it is. So is Amazon Prime. Okay, we'll be right back after the break, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to NFL Nation Live. This is our Week 13 show. We've closed the books on Turkey Day, turducken, and all the Thanksgiving stuff. We're turning now to the playoffs, and you got to win, play good. You got to run the ball, run, and play good defense in December if you want to play in January. I hope the Baltimore Ravens are taking note of that. In any case, I am Ref Guru, and along hosted with Hall of Famer Wayne, Violator Mabry, and the legendary pirate Captain Jack. Good comment in there. Entertainment is not a sport. You're absolutely right. If you follow this show, you've known that for a long time. Let's go to Coach B. As the Buffalo Bills are going to go into New England to take on the Patriots. Wake up
for you.
You're going to get your wings order to go, Coach?
Yeah, well, again, it's Anchor Bar in Buffalo. Anchor Bar, the original Buffalo wings. Don't go to that Buffalo Wild Wings place because that place is crap. First off, their wings are like the size of my pinky. Okay. Anchor Bar, that's the best sauce. The wings are good, and it's only a hop, skip, and a jump from going down to Niagara Falls. And then, watch when you go to Niagara Falls there as well, because first off, it's cold. Okay, just
Yeah,
make sure you
right.
go in September. Don't go now. Don't go now. That's words from Bill, and it's free. Bill telling you the words of wisdom. It's free. I charge everybody else because I am the great Bill Belichick.
Buffalo Patriots get buffalo wings in their clam chowder. Yeah, probably with the hot sauce. Yeah, the Raiders will not make the playoffs. Even if we win out, there's just too much other stuff going on.
So,
Too many other teams. There's not a lot of playoff spots to go around. AFC East going to have at least two. The North maybe one, the South one, the West maybe two, but it's not going to be the Raiders. It'll be the Chiefs. We could make an argument if we beat the Chargers on Sunday, but we'll see. Pittsburgh going to go to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Denver going to go to Baltimore.
You glossed over my game.
Oh, I thought you were done, Coach.
No, you didn't ask me how bad we're going to win. I don't even know who we're playing.
You're not going to win. Sorry, but we said you're getting your buffalo wings to go. Cool Kev already said you're going to get buffalo wings in your clam chowder.
It's
so
Anchor Bar, and it's going to be an upset.
No,
the New England Belichicks are going to beat the Buffalo Bills. I'm just saying it.
Well, you can say it, but that doesn't make it true, Coach.
Okay.
you can preach it all you want to, but you could be
next week
the Bill Baker of
next week when we win. Okay, I want a Dom Perignon. Pick out Wayne. Pick out whatever year is the really, really good year and the expensive year. I want Dom Perignon and some Russian caviar shipped to my place in Florida. I'll pick it up at Captain Jack's house on my way to Stewart. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
I'll send it to Cap, and then you can pick it up.
Of course.
Denver going to go into Baltimore, get beat by the Ravens. The Green Bay Packers have to go into Chicago to take on the Bears. I think the Bears are pissed off. I think if they're going to win another game this year, they might win. They might beat Detroit. I don't know. This is going to be it.
Get that shit right. Yeah. I see you don't have time for me to put on my damn. It's Melda. They're going to Detroit.
The Bears might be
I don't know who we're playing. We're going to win.
Right. The Bears might beat the Eastern Michigan team from whatever they are near Ann Arbor. But anyway, can the Packers really go into Chicago and beat the Bears this week? I have my doubts.
I'm going to take the Packers, even though Rodgers is somehow reportedly injured. I still say that they have enough going right there. Even in their struggles, I think they knock off the Bears at home.
And it's whose home game? It's the Packers at home? Or is it the Bears?
No, they're in Chicago.
They're in Chicago.
I am going to call a upset. I'm going to call Justin Fields as long as he's playing, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard yet. I'm assuming he does. If he doesn't,
I am going to say if Justin Fields plays and they're going to be playing Green Bay, who has looked not the greatest, and then you have Rodgers, who might be there might
he's banged up.
He's banged up as hell. I'm going to say the Bears.
Yeah,
and the rest of the crew beat.
I just think that they've hung the "I own you" banners all over the locker room. And I don't think it's end wells for the Packers. I think Rodgers is on his way out. I know he has to this point own the Bears, not so much this week. Bears have no quarterback and no defense. I agree with you, but that may still be enough to beat basically a pretty banged up Packers team. I know Packers scored 30-some points maybe against Philadelphia, against the Eagles in Philadelphia, which was pretty good, but Rodgers is hurting, and I think the Bears are going to come after him. And I don't think Jordan Love's going to beat the Chicago Bears in the Windy City. Rodgers' thumb is messed up, along with a few other things.
So I called the Bears, right?
Yes, you did. Jacksonville's going to go in and take on the Lions. Cleveland's going to go into Houston. I think the only news there is that, the return of Deshaun Watson, which I don't think is really a story, but I guess they can make it one if they want to. The Jets are going to go into Minnesota. Vikings get their second AFC East team in 2 weeks. I don't think the Jets are going to beat the Vikings. They could. If they do, the Vikings, they might still win the division by accident, but they'll be one and done.
You like that?
I did like that. Washington's going to go to New York to take on the Giants. Look at this. Washington gets the Giants this week. They have a bye. Then they get the Giants again in
Right.
2 weeks at home. They can essentially put the Giants on the clock or out of the playoffs with this week's win and on the clock in 2 weeks. I don't like the Giants at this point. I like Washington on the road. This is an important one, though, because Washington's clinging on to potentially one of the wild card spots. How do you guys see this one playing out?
Well, with the return of Chase Young to that Washington defense, and like I say, that offense with Heineke is clicking. I'm taking Washington also against the G-men.
Kev says the Giants are going to beat the Skins. I don't disagree, but I don't know how. I just don't think the Giants have enough. I think Jack Del Rio's got the Giants figured out. I just think he does. I'm not a huge Jack Del Rio fan. Don't love him or hate him, so to speak, but I just think he's got them figured out.
I got the Commodores on this one.
Yeah. The Titans going to go into Philadelphia and get their ass handed to them by the Eagles. The Titans just aren't that good. They got beat at home last week with the Bengals. I don't think the Eagles really have to do a whole lot to beat the Titans. And the Colts now are kind of pissed off that they got beat by the Steelers because the Titans going to take a loss. Had the Colts been able to win that, where's my little standing cheat sheet? Indianapolis is 3 games back of Tennessee. Had they won, they'd only be 2 games back of Tennessee. And if Tennessee going in, not that the Colts are going to beat the Cowboys in Dallas, but that loss against the Steelers really hurt the Colts because I just don't think they're going to have enough to recover. When you look at the schedule, Tennessee finishes with Jacksonville, the Chargers, Houston, Dallas, and again with Jacksonville. The Colts, they have Dallas and they have the bye, but then they're at Minnesota, the Chargers, the Giants, and then at Houston. So it's hard to say if the schedule favors one or the other because the Indianapolis has to be at Minnesota, at New York Giants. Tennessee gets Dallas, but they get them at home. And that's not a game necessarily Dallas is going to have to win at that point in the season. So I just think the Colts are in trouble. And I think had they been able to win a couple of games earlier in the year against the Titans, no less. But I just think when you go to Philadelphia, we talk about this. Run the ball, play good defense. The Titans do that, but they're not scoring enough points. You can only run the ball so far, right? And then at some point when you're behind, the running game is kind of right? Sorry, a little faster. Okay. Eagles lose by a field goal to King Henry. Ooh. I don't know, Kev.
No,
see.
No, Kev. And Tito, blessings to you, sir.
Right. I was just
Indeed.
Indeed.
Okay, Ed. Have a good one. Where are we? Seattle. Going to go into Los Angeles, and I think they'll take care of the Rams.
Yeah.
Rams are at Miami. Going to go into San Francisco. This is an interconference game on the road that probably in a lot of ways shouldn't matter, but it does. Miami needs to stay on top of the AFC East because I think the Bills will get that in New England. And San Francisco is a formidable opponent, especially when you have to go all the way to the West Coast to play them. But the Saints are okay. I think defense is decent. I don't think it's better than Miami. And 49ers only got 13 points last week. I like the Dolphins in the upset. What do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to say this is a close one, but I'm going to take San Francisco by 3 in this one.
I'm going to say, it's going to be a redo of Super Bowl 19.
Oh, well, San Francisco, you're picking the 49ers,
Yep.
Okay. Kansas City going to go into Cincinnati and play the Bengals in one of the bigger games of the week. There's a couple, Buffalo and New England. I think the Bills will take care of business, and Washington, New York, a little bit from that standpoint, but in Miami, San Francisco, from maybe more entertainment than playoff, but it's still those two. That's a game this late in the season that really matters to both of those teams. Kansas City going into Cincinnati is a whole different ball game now.
Right.
The Bengals. The Bengals are fighting for an AFC North spot. The Chiefs, for all practical purposes, have the AFC West locked up. Any chance that the Bengals are a little more hungry right now than Kansas City? I could just see Kansas City kind of not really being all that together this week.
I don't know about Cincinnati being. They may be hungry, but scheme-wise, I see KC having too much for them.
I agree with you, but whose game plan are they going to run? Chiefs going to run the one that didn't work in the AFC Championship game last year, or the Bengals going to try to retrieve the one that did work against the Chiefs in Kansas City?
Worth watching right there.
Yep.
I'm gonna go Bengals just because I think that they remember how the Titans used to have the Chiefs number.
Yeah.
I think that the Bengals have taken over the number against Kansas City. You know, the Titans relinquished it because they used to, have beat Kansas City just because. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say that the Bengals, because they need it more as well, will take it. In a home game in Cincinnati,
yeah,
I'll take the Bengals.
Well, they're going to have to figure out the Kelsey thing, which they did before in a championship game. This one's interesting, though, because, this one really probably doesn't impact seeding like some games might, because I think Kansas City is going to end up with the number 1 and number 2 seed. I don't think the Bengals are going to get a 2. They might get a 3. And so, it's not a situation where, like when the Rams went into New Orleans, it got beat, so they had to go back to New Orleans. I don't think that's the issue. I think win or lose, if it plays out right, Bengals still go to Kansas City, so to speak. I'm not sure it impacts that, but I think it could be interesting with regards to how the Bengals position themselves in the AFC North. But this is a game you want to win. But since it really, in my opinion, probably doesn't impact seeding, you want to get out of this game without anybody, getting dinged up this late in the season, right? I mean, injury on the Bengals side, Burrow, Chase, whatever, Mixon, whatever, that could hurt you more than help you with the win, right?
Absolutely would.
Actually, though, one thing it might do, and I'm sorry, Wayne, I didn't mean to step on you in that one, is if Cincinnati does beat the Chiefs, wouldn't that be the third loss for the Chiefs, which means that they have the same record as Buffalo, and then Buffalo has them on head-to-head? Or am I wrong?
Buffalo is 8-3. If they win, they'd be 9-3. Kansas City loses, they would be 9-3. So yes, Buffalo would have the head-to-head. Yeah. Because Buffalo beat them in
Kansas City.
In Kansas City by 4.
Aha!
So
aha!
Yeah, so I think so it could affect seeding for Kansas City and Buffalo, but not for Cincinnati, Kansas City is what I would say. Yeah, it could affect seeding for Kansas City for sure, as far as 1 or 2. I don't think win or lose, Cincinnati's affected necessarily by the seeding. I think their seeding position comes from them winning the division or being the runner-up to Baltimore, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Cincinnati. I don't know why.
I hear you. I just think Kansas City won't be all that fired up to play on the road, and weather may be a factor. The Chargers are going to go into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. I think this is a game we could win, should win, probably will win. The officiating crew is what it is. I don't have any comments on that this week. But I like our chances against the Chargers, especially except for the fact that we had an overtime game in Seattle. So some of our guys may not even get out of the whirlpool until tomorrow. So I'm a little worried about stamina against the Chargers, who really had a road game, if you can call it that, but they only traveled 500 miles to go to Arizona and beat the Cardinals by 1 point. So this is a Chargers team that is in a better position to make the playoffs than some of the other AFC teams. So they could technically be more, if you will, motivated. But I like our chances against the powder blue and gold or whatever they are at home at Allegiant. What do you guys think?
I'm taking my boys at home by 3.
I like the Raiders, and I think it's because remember the Chargers got some of these really precarious wins They should have lost to the Browns. They could have lost to the Cardinals this weekend.
That's right.
They got all of these kind of iffy wins. They're beat up. Okay. And granted, the only player that I know is beat up is Jacobs. I know that there are other people, obviously, that are on IR and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think that if we get Hobbs back, which it's looking like we're going to get Hobbs back, that'll be something. I'm not sure if we get Renfro and Waller back until the Rams
Probably
game.
not, if at all.
But yeah, if at all. But I just like the fact that we know that we should have or could have at least had that win in LA. And I think the Raiders are going to play up for it. I like the Raiders at home.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm concerned about the Raiders and not that we're not the better team, but that our recovery from Seattle is going to limit us a little bit. So I'm concerned about that, especially if we get behind. I like our chances at home. I think we're the better football team. I just worry about whether or not we're going to be, quote, ready to play from a physical standpoint. And if we are, then I think the Chargers are in trouble. The Chargers are in trouble. Indianapolis going to go into Dallas, get beat by the Cowboys. And then Tampa.
Oh!
That's actually the Sunday night game, if you can believe that. I think they should have flexed another game into that, but it is what it is. Super Bowl V repeat. The Saints are going to go into Tampa Bay, and I think they're going to beat the Bucks. They held the Saints last week to 13 points. I don't think the Saints per se are the better football team. I just think the Bucks are just really bad right now.
Well, this is an interesting too, but I'm going to take the Saints in an upset.
Yeah, I like the Saints in this one, but that's just going to throw the NFC South into a huge one because Tampa Bay gets beat, they'll be 5-7. Atlanta's already 5-7, so they'll either continue to drop another game against the Tampa Bay, or they'll find a way to beat Pittsburgh. Then if Tampa Bay gets beat, Atlanta and Tampa Bay are tied. Okay? Tampa Bay's remaining games are at San Francisco, Cincinnati, Arizona, Carolina, and then at Atlanta. So here we go. Tampa Bay gets beat by the Saints. Atlanta beats Pittsburgh. You could be looking for a showdown. Atlanta still has to go because Atlanta then has a bye. So in week 14. So they get a little bit of a break. They got to go to New Orleans, which is a division game. Then they got to go to Dallas. I know those are 2 road games, and I know the Saints a division game, and they have trouble with the Saints. But those aren't road games that'll wipe you out, so to speak. It's not like they got to go to Seattle or something. They might get beat up in New Orleans, but they play Arizona, which is a winnable game at home. And they got Tampa Bay at home. So the Cardinals, with the win against Pittsburgh and a Tampa Bay loss, I'm just saying that out of the remaining 5 games, Tampa Bay has 3 out of 5 on the road. Atlanta has 2 out of 4 on the road because they have a bye. So think about that. Tampa Bay with 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 on the road, including at San Francisco and at Arizona. And then Atlanta, if they beat Pittsburgh and the Bucks lose and Atlanta's tied, they out of their 5 games that remain, actually out of the 5 weeks of the schedule that remain, one of those weeks is a bye, and only 2 out of the 4 on the road. So I know I'm just saying it's not over for Atlanta. And I think even if they win the division, get a playoff, blah, 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 they're still one and done because they're going to end up with Dallas or Washington or something. But I just want you guys to see how that could possibly play out. That I think, although Atlanta hasn't done what they should have done, they could have put this to bed a long time ago. They still have a chance here. On the clock, I'm advocating for Cleveland and Arizona. And I had thought about Atlanta, but now that I've reassessed Atlanta's position from a schedule standpoint, doesn't mean they're going to win. But from a schedule standpoint, I think I want to leave them hanging around for just a little bit. But what do you think about Cleveland or Arizona on the clock?
Second it. No problem with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Week 13, call it. Cleveland, Arizona are on the clock. Cleveland number 12 in scoring, and Arizona number 11 in scoring.
But they have no defense to stop anybody else.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. All right. Well, that's going to cover it for our Week 13 show. Man, we're turning the corner here, and it's if it hasn't gotten serious already, it is serious now, and will be really interesting to see who goes on the clock next week. The NFC South, AFC North, still a little bit too close to call, but as we head into Week 14 and December football, V and or Cap, what are you looking for this week?
Man, I'm just looking for some exciting games. I'll be in Vegas, so I'm expecting my team to show up, show out. Like I say, these guys will come in there remembering last year's game, Week 18. So we can't come out slow. Get them in the off early, hit Herbert early and often.
Yep.
Game over.
And bottle up Eckler. The wideouts are still going to hurt us.
Our secondary, got both of those guys back to this game.
Yeah, our secondary still bites. So Carr's going to have to rely on the running game, field position, and the clock, and then hope they can get the ball down the field to some folks that are open. I'm not saying we're not the better football team. I think we are. I just think we're going to have a sea chickens hangover, and that concerns me with regards to being able to get this win.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this week. Appreciated your chat comments. I'm sorry we didn't get all the officiating stuff that we wanted to cover, but as you can tell that there's a lot of things to discuss there. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but we'll do our best to educate you in the most transparent way that we can, and as much as we can from that standpoint. We didn't have a trivia question this week, but it will give you a little hint about some things that we can teach you with regards to officiating when we do have those questions. Cap or V, you can join in here too. But just as an FYI, what is one difference between holding and defensive pass interference? Or what should I say? If you're a deep official, back judge, side judge, field judge, how do you determine if you have DPI or you have holding on a play?
Whether its amount of the 5 yards and whether the ball's in the air.
Yep. Absolutely. Exactly. And what's one difference between a personal foul and unsportsmanlike conduct?
Whichever one screws the Raiders more, you call that.
Okay. The other one is that personal fouls are live ball fouls, unsportsmanlike conducts are dead ball fouls.
Okay. Dead ball fouls, right?
Yep. So they're both 15 yards. But the difference between it being a live ball and a dead ball is that they're not going to offset. So there's always that. They'll be administered in the order with which they happen. So anyway. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with a Week 14 show. It's going to get fun as we get closer to the playoffs. There'll be less to talk about with regards to the over-under, but if we have officiating stuff, we'll try to cover that here. And Cap, if Richie Riche has any additional questions, put those out there, and we'll see if we can cover them the best we can.
Yeah, like I said, I'm going to let him know. I'm going to let him know that he's got to watch.
But also let him know that we appreciate them being attuned to that because it's part of sport. And more importantly, that he would lean on our show to try to get some answers because we want to support Mile Roundtable Network in particular and Wild Wild West show specifically. So give them our appreciation for even reaching out and asking us for some help there. So appreciate it.
For sure. I'll make sure. I always get my plug in on their show to have people come over to this one. And I always make sure I say garglers for the coach before I leave the show as well. Those are two things I have to do. Yeah. And but no, I appreciate being here, and I know that they throw people over our way as well. And so
that's great.
Appreciate it. Camaraderie there. So appreciate it.
All right, everybody, take care of yourself and enjoy the games this week, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, what a weekend! My God, I'm there with Wayne. Yeah!
That's going to be a fun one. Nope, that's not the right one. I thought I changed that out, man. I get talking to Coach B and everything's going on, and Eastern Michigan Lions.
Give me steel! Give me steel! Give me steel! I'm good!